Hello and welcome to the Sallie Tomato YouTube channel. I'm Kate, and here at Sallie Tomato we enjoy bringing you tutorials that both educate and inspire. I hope today's project will inspire a little versatility for your bag making. Today we're going to be making our Lane bag. Renee Kapitanski was imagining Elizabeth Lane, the main character in Christmas in Connecticut, walking to her publishing office in New York City when she designed this bag. Lane is an easy-to-sew shoulder bag featuring multiple closure options and is perfectly sized to hold all your daily essentials. This bag pairs beautifully with any of our Sallie Tomato wallet patterns, such as Bella, Lucky Penny, or George, and is a fashionable addition to your handmade bag collection. The finished size of Lane is approximately 8 inches wide, 10 inches high, and 4 inches deep. It features magnetic snap or turn lock tab closure, shoulder straps, an interior slip pocket, and boxed bottom. Before we get started, be sure to grab a pattern. See the description below this video and follow the link to find all the pattern information. All the patterns can be found at sallietomato.com. Use our retailer locator on our website to find a Sallie Tomato retailer near you. All the supplies you need are listed on the back of the pattern. This project is suitable for any fabric to use as the main exterior fabric. That makes it truly unique to your style and taste. We do recommend a non-woven fabric such as cork, faux leather, or microsuede for the contrast because there will be raw edges. Also consider what style closure you'd like for your bag. I'll be showing you a magnetic snap closure and also a turn lock closure for the tab. Once you've decided on your fabrics, gather your pattern and supplies, then cut out all the pattern pieces that you'll need following your pattern, and let's begin. For the tutorial, I'm going to be using the same fabric for the main fabric as well as the contrast, so I've gone ahead and cut all the pieces I needed from one fabric. The lining fabric, I'm using our Turtle Tex, so that already has a coating on the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm going to skip the fusible interfacing because I really don't need it for my main fabric. I'm using the non-woven, and the lining already has a coating. I'm actually using fleece instead of foam because, again, we have the more substantial main fabric. And lastly, we have the heavy stabilizer. This will be for our base. The first step in the instructions is to fuse interfacing to your main fabric pieces as well as your lining fabric pieces. Again, this is optional and is going to depend on the fabric that you've selected. I'm using a non-woven faux leather in a embossed crocodile alligator print kind of style. So this really does not need any interfacing at all. And the lining that I'm using, again, it's Turtle Tex, so it already has a coating on the back, so I don't need to interface this fabric either. But go ahead, if your fabric needs to be interfaced, now is the time to do that. All right, our next step is to attach the fleece, or depending on your fabric, you may select or choose to use foam or air mesh as your fleece option. This is going to give extra body to your main fabric pieces. So align all the edges of the fleece and the main fabric. I'll add a few sewing clips, and then we're going to go to the machine and baste all the edges. At the sewing machine, we're going to stitch with a very narrow seam allowance, about 1/8 inch, all the way around all 4 edges or sides of our main fabric pieces. And if your fleece or foam extends out just a little bit, I'm going to trim mine even after I finish basting. On the wrong side of the main fabric, piece A, that's your exterior, you'll position the edge template that's included in your pattern along the top long right hand edge of your piece A, and you'll align those corners. Trace the top curved edge of the template. Then you'll flip the template over, aligning the top left corner of the template with the top left corner of your piece A, and you'll continue completing that traced curved edge. When you're tracing this curved edge, make sure that bottom straight edge of the template is parallel to the top edge of your fabric. So you can measure down along the short outside edge of your template for that measurement, and then at the center of your piece A that aligns with the center of your template, measure so that that distance is the same. Now we're going to head back to the sewing machine and top stitch just below that marked curved line. Then you're going to cut away the excess following the top traced line. Following your pattern, you're going to mark a square at both bottom corners of your piece A. Then you're going to cut away the excess following the marks for the bottom corners. And you're going to repeat these steps for the remaining piece A as well as both lining pieces A, just as I've done here. With wrong sides together, fold each long edge of the contrast fabric piece D connector to the center. Then at the sewing machine, top stitch a 1/4 inch from each long fold edge. Slide one rectangle ring over the end of each connector so the flat side of the hardware is against the wrong side of the connector, and then with wrong sides together, fold the raw ends of each connector so they meet in the middle. One fold end is going to encase that rectangle ring. Use some basting tape or a sewing clip or a pin to hold those layers together. I'm also using a Sew Tight magnet just to help keep those ends from popping before I get to the sewing machine. I've used basting tape to help hold the folded under ends in place, but with right sides up, position one folded connector in from the side edge and up from the bottom edge, and refer to your pattern for the exact dimensions. This will be on the main fabric piece A exterior, the right side. Now at the sewing machine, top stitch each connector near the hardware and then pivot to sew an 1/8 inch along the remaining edges, creating a box of stitches. You'll notice I'm doing a little reverse stitching. That way I can back stitch out of a tight area and my presser foot won't be hitting the hardware. Repeat this step for the remaining piece A exterior and connectors, just like I've done here. An optional but really beautiful touch is installing a small rivet or a Chicago screw, like I've used here, centered within the stitched box. And certainly visit our YouTube channel for a helpful video tutorial. A really pretty touch is installing a Handmade label. Install the Handmade label on the right side of your exterior piece A, that's the front, positioned up and in from one bottom corner. Or you could certainly center your label between the two sides, left and right sides, and then that measurement up from the bottom edge, and refer to your pattern for those measurements. Another optional design feature is shaping the closure tab. On the wrong side of one contrast fabric piece C, that's the tab, trace the tab template either round or angled. You'll find those in the pattern, aligning the template to one short end of piece C, and then cut that shaped end following the traced lines. And here you can see I've used the second shape template for the end of the tab. Since I'll be showing you two different tabs, I thought I'd use the two different shapes. All right, we're ready to install the magnetic snap, but definitely skip this step if you prefer using turn lock hardware. On the right side of the remaining contrast piece C, that's the tab, position and install the male half of the magnetic snap, centered and in from one short edge. And be sure to refer to your pattern for that measurement. All right, we're ready to assemble the closure tab. With right sides together, place the shaped contrast piece C on the untrimmed remaining piece C, aligning the straight edges and then the shaped end nearest to the snap hardware. On the right side of the shaped piece C, top stitch the long edges and the shaped bottom edge with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. If you've chosen to have an unshaped tab, you can skip this next step. For a shaped tab, after you've top stitched, trim away the bottom layer, piece C, carefully cutting along the shaped edge, piece C. On the right side of the main piece A, exterior front, install the female half of the magnetic snap or the key half of your turn lock hardware, centered just down from the shaped top edge. And again, we've included that measurement in the pattern instructions. Be sure to watch a video tutorial on how to install this hardware on our YouTube channel. This next step, if you've used the magnetic snap closure, you would skip. On the right side of the contrast tab, install the eyelet half of the turn lock, centered and down from the short, straight edge of the tab. Again, the measurement is detailed in your instructions. We're ready to assemble the exterior. With right sides together, align the edges of the main exterior pieces A, and sew the bottom edge together between the corner cutouts with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press the seam open. If you're using fabric, such as I am, that can't be ironed, use a seam roller or creasing tool to flatten the seam. Try holding the seam allowance in place with a few pieces of washi tape. The tape is really easily torn away, even after stitching through it. And then top stitch along both sides of the seam with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Center the stabilizer piece F, that's for the base, over the wrong side of the seam between the corner indents. Hold the stabilizer piece in place with basting spray, basting tape, or glue, and then install the bag feet in the corners of piece F. And again, follow the pattern instructions for that measurement. and visit our YouTube channel to watch a video tutorial on installing the bag feet hardware. With right sides together, align the side edges of the exterior pieces A. You'll sew those together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, ending at the corner indents, and then press the seams open. Again, if you're using a fabric that should not be ironed, use a seam roller or your fingers or a pressing tool to flatten those edges. With right sides together, now you're going to align the corner indent edges, matching the side and bottom seams. You'll sew together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, creating boxed corners. Sew a second row of stitching with an 1/8 inch seam allowance for reinforcement. Center the contrast tab, wrong side up, on the right side of the piece A back. You'll baste along the raw edge with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to set the exterior aside, but leave it with wrong sides out. We're ready to work on our lining. The first step is to attach the slip pocket, so be sure to visit our YouTube channel to review a video tutorial on how to create and attach the slip pocket. The steps are detailed in the pattern instructions, so follow along and watch the tutorial for a little extra help or extra tips. With the slip pocket attached, we're ready to begin assembling the lining. With right sides together, align the edges of the lining pieces A. Begin sewing at the top of each side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance and gradually increase the width of the seam allowance to a 1/2 inch. Sew the bottom edge also with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, leaving an opening about 5 inches wide between the corner cutouts. Just a quick tip, using the wider seam allowance in the lining helps the lining fit neatly inside the finished bag. Now press the seams open. We'll move on to create the boxed corners in the lining, following the same steps as we did for assembling the exterior box corners. This time you sew the box corners with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. once you have the box corners both stitched, trim the seam allowances to about 1/4 inch wide. And then turn the lining right side out. With right sides together, slip the lining inside the exterior, aligning the top edges and the side seams. The lining slip pocket is best if it's against the exterior back. Tuck the tab inside the bag and then sew around the top edge of the bag with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You'll turn the bag right side out by gently pushing the exterior and lining through the opening in the lining. Top stitch the opening in the lining closed with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Gently push the lining down inside the exterior and then use your fingers to roll the top seam edge, keeping that top edge nice and smooth. Now at the sewing machine, top stitch along that top seam with an 1/8 inch seam allowance. You'll notice that I am top stitching with the lining facing up. Normally I prefer to top stitch from the right side of the main fabric. However, my machine that I'm using does not have a free arm, so it's a little more challenging. The other option you could do would be to turn the bag so the lining is right side out and the main fabric is to the inside, and you would be stitching then similar to what I am. The lining would actually be your main fabric. Your main fabric would be the lining in that case. So experiment a little bit and see which technique might work best for you so that you almost always try to have your best looking stitches on the main fabric or the right side of your main exterior fabric. We are ready to make and attach the straps. With wrong sides together, fold each length edge of one contrast fabric piece B, that's the shoulder strap, to the center, just like I'm doing here. I'm using plenty of sewing clips. And then you're going to top stitch along each long fold with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Certainly use double-sided basting tape on the wrong side, which centered on the strap piece, to help hold those long edges in place. And another tip, to keep the strap nice and smooth once it's top stitched, be sure to begin the top stitching along each long edge at the same end. Now, with the bag and one shoulder strap, thread one end of a shoulder strap through the rectangle ring on the back from the outside towards the inside, and then fold the end of the strap up about an inch. And you'll top stitch close to the hardware and then also an 1/8 inch from the raw end of the strap. You're going to repeat this step, attaching the opposite end of the strap to the remaining back rectangle ring, and make sure that you don't have any twists in the handle. I like to start at the back. That way, if I have a little mistake, I can be assured that this was my practice side on the back. So then I'll know when I attach the strap to the front, I've already had my little practice with attaching the strap to the back. You're going to repeat these steps, attaching the remaining strap to the front rectangle rings. A very stylish option would be to install a small rivet or a small Chicago screw in each strap end, centered between the lines of top stitching. And I would definitely recommend using the Chicago screws if you have used the Chicago screws to help reinforce and add style to the rectangle ring connectors on the front and back of your bag. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make the Lane bag. Let us know in the comments if you have any further questions or suggestions for this pattern. Please share and show off your photos of your completed project. We'd love to see your style. Use the hashtags Sallie Tomato and Lane bag on social media so we can see it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. That way you'll always know when a new video is here. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll check out the rest of our pattern line for more inspiring and creative projects. Until the next video, have a great making day.